Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the September 23rd business meeting of the Board of School Directors. At this time, I'd like to ask if there's anyone who would like to speak to an agenda item only, to please come in and sign with Ms. LaPera. At the end of the meeting, there will also be an option for public comment as well. So at this time, it's really only for agenda items. And is there anyone who would like to speak at this time? Okay. What I'd like to do now is just approve the minutes of the following meetings: the August 19th regular business board minutes, the September 16th Education Committee and supplementary regular board minutes, as well as accepting the minutes of the following committee meetings: September 10th Curriculum Committee, September 13th Policy Committee, September 18th Communications Committee, and September 19th Facilities and Purchasing Committee meeting minutes. Do I have a motion to approve? Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? The motion's passed. Dr. McGinley.
Thank you. Good evening. I want to comment this evening on the start of the school year. We had a very exciting summer and a very interesting September thus far. Our summer was busy for a number of reasons. One was that we had an unusually high number of people that we welcomed to our new teacher induction program. We had 52 new professional staff members joining us this summer, some because of enrollment growth and many because of people on various kinds of leaves of absence. But it was a busy summer in terms of hiring the very best teachers and making sure that they were well prepared to greet our students at the beginning of the school year. Also, because of enrollment growth, our operations folks were managing a number of projects. We opened the school year without the use of portable classrooms at Welsh Valley and at Gladwin, but as of last week we have those in place and they are in use, and they are really great spaces for learning, and our team did a nice job making sure that they were well stocked with everything that they need for use this year. The Welsh Valley portables will be in use throughout the anticipated construction at Welsh Valley, and the Gladwin portables, the same thing. And we'll have more on those projects down the line. Less visible to most people is the new classrooms that were built over the past year at Ballackinwood Middle School, with 8 new classrooms coming online within the walls of Ballackinwood. We repurposed a number of spaces in that building, and that is also part of our enrollment driven projects. And also this year we started our school year with a new set of security procedures at our front doors, and parents who visit our schools know that we now require a photo ID. We have new sign-in procedures. We have added additional security cameras, and in 3 of our buildings where the main office was not located at the entry door, we have relocated offices, and that was quite extensive amount of work over the course of the summer. So at Penn Valley and at Penn Wynn, the office is relocated to the front door, and also the bigger move was the Ballackinwood office relocation project, because the Ballackinwood office was physically in the center of the building as a result of a number of additions and changes in that building over time. And so that entire office has been moved right to the front door, and we have new security procedures. We were also, in light of the work of our School Safety Task Force last spring, working to strengthen our on-site drills and to make them more realistic, and to make sure that we are better prepared to handle emergency situations. And each of our schools has an identified emergency relocation site that's known to our faculty members and our administrators, so that if we ever had to leave a school in an emergency, we would know where everyone was regrouping, and what else had to happen so that everyone was safe and accounted for. Hopefully there's never a time when we need to use those procedures. And the last thing that kept us busy this summer was the departure of the long-serving Assistant Superintendent, Dr. Michael Kelly, who's now the Superintendent in Radnor School District, and that led to some changes here with Dr. Marseille coming on board as Assistant Superintendent. and Megan Schaefer coming on as our Senior Director of Policy and Personnel. And so we, hopefully as of tonight, we almost complete our slate of administrators with one administrative hiring that's in the agenda tonight. Last week we had a series of interesting meetings, important meetings about the proposed expansion of the choice area for the high school, for the high schools. And it's a dialogue that started here last spring, and there's a map on the wall that's been there since last spring when we first started talking about this issue. This past week we supplied a good amount of information to the board and to the public in three long meetings. And the meetings themselves are posted on our website as our support materials. But in order to make sure that we're bringing people up to speed, we are going to do a lightning round review of the topics that we covered last week. We're not presenting significantly new information or maybe no new information, but we are going to just review that so that if people have comments or at the end of the meeting that there is a context for those comments, and we'll also talk about future meetings and next steps. So with that, I'm going to call on Mr. Orlando to talk about where we are with our 10th day enrollment and where we are with enrollment projections.
Okay. So I'm going to go over the 10th day enrollment. The 10th day enrollment this year was on September 18th, and just kind of give you a picture of what the enrollment was or is in the 10th day. K to 5, our actual numbers are 3,508 students. Grades 6 to 8, there's 1,866. And grades 9 to 12, there's 2,485 for total 10th day enrollment of 7,859 students. Last year, the 10th day enrollment was 7,682 students, so it's increased by 177 students. The projections last week, I won't go through them, I promise, but they're on the website, so you can peruse through those. Again, we did the 60-40 split, the 50-50, and the 40-60, and some numbers from the original Dijon Healy. One thing that did come out of the meeting last Monday, the BC adjustment that we had put on one of our enrollment projections, we are looking at some of the comments, and they are under review based upon those comments. The last thing I just want to go over, the current versus historical. The question came to be what was the 25-75 ratio look like? So we have provided them here this evening. The above numbers are abbreviated from last Monday, but the question was, what did the 25-75 numbers look like split both at Harrington and at Lower Merion? So we provided them to you this evening. We believe, though, it's unlikely that scenario would actually happen based upon the new Harrington, I'll call it, and all the different offerings that we have that we believe that will not revert back to what it was years ago. I'll turn over to Dr. Marseille, who's going to go a little more in detail as to the Harrington today.
Thank you, Mr. Orlando. Since it's lightning round, I want to briefly take you through a presentation that Mr. Everslog, the principal of Harrington, and Mr. Hughes put together for us last week. And the idea was to take a look at some of the programmatic changes that has occurred at Harrington from 2008 to 2013. Obviously, it's a different building for a variety of reasons. And then we're going to talk a little bit about some of the changes with regards to some of the implications for the growth at Lower Merion and how we can accommodate that in the district administrative office building or building A. So Mr. Everslog, when he talks about, we see that there's been tremendous growth in the number of AP and honor courses that we've offered from 2008 to 2013 and saw some significant changes there. We also went from two very separate district course guides to one complete guide that really provided a lot more equity in terms of the courses that were offered at both Lower Merion and at Harrington. We also saw a very different IB program now than we did before. We've had and we've continued to have a very large number of students who are not only enrolling in the IB program, but doing exceptionally well, earning their IB diplomas. So we saw a tremendous amount of growth from 2008 to 2013, where you'll see that 32.7% of the total number of juniors and seniors this year who are currently participating in an IB experience. We also saw a different heritage with regards to dual enrollment, where we didn't have a dual enrollment program in 2008. We have a very strong dual enrollment program at Harriton, currently with 45 students enrolled, and you get a sense of some of the courses that are being offered through Penn State's campus that students have an opportunity to take. And then we spent a little bit of time talking about the difference with PIAA and that our students really weren't afforded the opportunity to compete at the same level, considering their schedule and their being part of the Delaware Valley League and being, and then now moving to PIAA allows for a lot more participation in sports, and obviously our success with some of our girls' teams, women's teams, speaks to that in terms of some of the transitions. Then we had a conversation that Mr. Hughes took us through, and we talked about this in other meetings, about what would be the implications for enrollment growth at Lower Merion High School. And what we saw was that in 13-14 and 14-15, we can continue to operate in Lower Merion High School's main building. Though I remind the board and the public that there are some space that we are currently using, more specifically the gym area that students do currently use, and they come from Lower Merion's main building to here to do that. So we're thinking about the total number of classrooms that are available in the DAO, and you see that we have 14 on the third floor, 5 on the second, and 2 on the first, which we can talk about in terms of their readiness and preparedness for instruction, but they are available. Some of them are being occupied as office spaces currently. But then we started talking about, well, what would that look like beyond 14-15? And what we saw that if we thought about this in 15-16 with regards to the projected growth, that we envision occupying 4 classrooms on the first floor. And probably thinking about some content electives that would go to that. Those on the screen are examples of possible courses, not necessarily the courses that will go there, but some ideas there as well. And then when we move on to 16-17, we envision, based on the projection, that we'll probably utilize 8 classrooms on the first and second floor. And we'll probably have a group of 9th graders who are taking social studies and English classes as well. Move further into the projection, and we're thinking about using the entire space on the third floor and creating a half-day schedule where students would take half of their courses in Lower Merion High School main, and then take the other half of their courses in Lower Merion High School Building A, which is the district administrative office. And obviously a lot of work to do around really narrowing down that schedule. But those were some of the possibilities that we presented the last couple of meetings with the transition that Harriton has had in the last several years as a different building in terms of program, and what that would look like for Lower Merion High School in terms of growth, and possibly using the facilities here, whether it's the first, second, or third floor. I think my colleague and friend here is going to, Pat Gannon, is going to talk a little bit about the next several slides.
I was looking for the baton to hand off for the lightning round. Okay. So I want to go ahead and talk about facilities, and this is a somewhat abbreviated version of the presentation I gave on Thursday morning related to facilities. It's the first time we've talked about facilities related to the high school enrollment expansion. So we're looking at 3 different scenarios. The first scenario is a status quo where boundaries remain as they are. And then the second 2 scenarios, or rather number 2 and number 3, are should we implement choice and half the students go to each high school, we implement choice and 40% go to Harriton, 60% go to Lower Merion High School. We are interested in the highest projected enrollment when we're trying to figure out how many classrooms we need. In this case, it happens in the last year of the projection, 2021-22. By means of a simple calculation, assuming that each high school has a working or an operational capability of 1,400 students, we can take the highest projected enrollment, find out what the difference between that and 1,400 is, divide by 25 students per classroom, and round up. So you end up with something that looks like this. Anywhere from Harriton needing 10 additional classrooms under the status quo scenario up to Lower Merion needing 14 classrooms under scenario 3. There's a little asterisk under Harriton for scenario 3. You'll note that the highest projected enrollment is 69 students beyond 1,400. We would not add additional classrooms for 69 students. So I'm going to talk about some concepts that we've explored for adding classrooms at Harriton, both permanent classrooms and temporary classrooms. I want to direct your attention to this portion of the Harriton building. This is an overhead photograph, and I have a circle there around the back side of the building. And this is where, if we were going to build permanent classrooms, we've come up with a concept where we could add them onto the building as such. And basically, we're building onto a space that currently right now is outside of the fitness room, but it is an extension of our 3-story academic wing. And there are 3 classrooms on each floor. If we need 6 classrooms, we build 2 floors. If we need more than that, we build 3 floors. If we are going to look at a temporary solution, we would go back in history to 2003 when we had in place a large temporary building we referred to as the M building. And it would look something like this, or it could even be a 2-story version of this, depending on how many classrooms we need. Again, we would look to locate it outside the building in the same general vicinity. This is a conceptual site plan that shows where this would be. It may have to be adjusted. It may impact one of the playing fields, but it would generally be in the same location and interface with the school in the same manner. These are cost estimates that we've come up with for both permanent and temporary classrooms. On the temporary side, it assumes that we purchase the units like we did with the M building. It also includes a cost estimate to handle the increased stormwater management associated with additional impervious surface. We are about 30,000 square feet under the allowed impervious surface at Harriton. And of course, to do any of these options would take up some of that impervious surface. And if you take some of that up, you have to compensate by installing additional stormwater management to handle the runoff associated with the additional impervious. Turning our attention now to Lower Merion and the district admin building, or what Dr. Marseille referred to as the A building. We already have a portion of the first floor dedicated to the high school, the gymnasium and locker rooms, and the first 2 classrooms inside door number 4 there. Not currently in use, but have been ready for use since the building was renovated. If we were to go ahead and use space in here for additional classrooms from the high school, we would add a visitor screening station on the first floor. On the second floor, we're looking at 5 classrooms that could be available, and then the entire third floor. And as Dr. Marseille pointed out, 5 classrooms on the second floor, 14 on the third floor, in addition to the 2 on the first floor for a total of 21. The classroom configuration already exists. It's the way it's been since the building was built in the early 30s. The recent renovations we completed brought the entire building up to code compliance. There was new mechanical, electrical, plumbing guts, if you will, put into the building, and then the spaces that we're currently using now for offices got new HVAC and electrical and plumbing. There were alternates not selected to add a group restroom on the 3rd floor and to put a new HVAC system into the 2nd and the 3rd floor. We were able to create this boardroom, and we are using many of the spaces on the second floor for offices, even though they're still configured as classrooms. In order to use the spaces for classroom on the second and third floor, we would want to do those HVAC upgrades and the restroom upgrade on the third floor, and what I would refer to as classroom fit out, go into each space and make sure we have a up-to-date whiteboard, we have a ceiling mounted projector, we have enough power and data outlets, etc. There are some additional code upgrades associated with bringing it up to educational use, but these appear to be minor, adding drinking fountains, things like that. This is our conceptual cost estimate. This includes using it includes 4 science rooms, the price of creating 4 science rooms, which is something that was not included in the permanent classroom option up at Harriton. If we look at the growth of enrollment over time and how that would affect when classrooms are needed, we can again use the same simple calculation and lay it out on a spreadsheet like this for each one of the scenarios. If we zero in on scenario number 3, and we could apply the same analysis to any one of these scenarios at any time, we would have something that looks like this. And this has been adjusted from the simple mathematical formula to match the program that Dr. Marseille just talked about, the concept of how Mr. Hughes and his team would use the district admin office over time. So we see that in 15-16, they would be looking for 4 classrooms. They would be using the first and second floor. The following year, 8 classrooms, again on the first and second floor. And then when they get to 17-18, they're going to be looking for the third floor and beyond. So in terms of looking at when we might want to have a project finished in order to be able to use the third floor or to use second and third floor, whatever, we can look at this and say, well, we'd want to make sure it was finished by the summer of 2017. This is kind of a summary of what I've just shown you in terms of classrooms for each one of the scenarios, rather scenario 1 and scenario 3. Which is the most classrooms at Harriton, the most classrooms at Lower Merion. And the numbers shown here do not reflect the temporary classrooms at Harriton, they're for the permanent classrooms. The little asterisk up there for Harriton designates the fact that it does not include any science labs. But we also wanted to point out here that there's some information we don't have about the cost of these options and that we're still working on, and we'll be back next month. The primary one has to do with parking. I've talked about classrooms. The parking is, I'm not prepared to talk about that because we had to wait and do a parking study, traffic and parking study, and that is ongoing as we speak. The data was beginning to be collected last week. You can't do one of these in the summertime because school's not in session. You won't get an accurate picture of what's actually happening.
I just want to add, Pat, that on this slide also the unknown is the cost of the 8 classrooms here. So even if the board were to elect to maintain our current boundaries, we would need 10 classrooms at Harriton at 5.2, and then there's some portion of the 4.4 that would have to be spent here to have 8 classrooms in permanent use. We
Right.
don't know that portion yet, and that's another figure that we have to get.
Right. We'll be working on that. As far as the lead time for design, bidding, and construction of these, this is the numbers we're currently looking at for permanent classrooms at Harriton. We need at least 24 months. That includes the land development time. Same with the temporary classrooms. DAO renovation does not require land development. We're still looking for about an 18-month lead time for design, bidding, and construction. I want to just talk briefly about a covered walkway between the new Lower Merion High School and the DAO. This is the architect's concept for that. This is kind of an overhead view of it and the cost estimate for that. A little bit more about traffic and parking. As I mentioned, we're looking at that now. The conclusions our traffic engineer draws will also include the projections of different amounts of students for enrollment. But at the end of the day, the township has the authority to determine how much parking we must have on the site. That could happen one of 2 ways. It could be when we go to them and ask for land development approval for a certain change that requires land development approval. It could also happen if the zoning officer becomes aware that there is insufficient parking on one of our sites, and he could investigate, and then he could order us to make adjustments. We expect to see an increase for parking requirement of 70 to well over 100 spaces at each one of the schools, and again, the township will have the last determination of that. So our next steps are to complete our traffic study. Once we have that, we'll go back and do more coordination with the township staff in terms of what's going to be required for approvals and what sort of negotiation we may be able to do with determining the total number of parking spaces. We'll review and refine our cost estimates, both for the the 8-classroom version at Lower Merion, as the superintendent said, and also for adding the science rooms at Harrington. Are there any questions I could answer? Thank you.
These, Pat, the costs that you have estimated, do they include the soft costs also?
Yes, they do.
Okay. That's okay. And then, I lost my question. But under the scenario 3, the most classrooms that would be required at Lower Merion are 14, but your estimate is for 21 classrooms. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So
The
it would
estimate
be
is for
something less
the
than
entire
that.
building, or rather, it's all the work required on the second and the third floor.
And the reason it's all the work required on the second or third floor is because once you're in there doing the work, since the classroom's are already there, it wouldn't be cost effective to skip a room or two on the HVAC and just go on to the next room, so it would be cost effective to do the entire project. We also use part of this building for offices, and so we would balance the need for offices with the need for classrooms within the context of those classrooms. But 21 are available.
Just a few observations and questions. So I just want to point out, if you go to the slide with the population distributions over time, there's a very significant leap in population, student enrollment projected in the least reliable time for the enrollment projections. 6 and 7 years out.
You're referring to this one?
Yes.
Okay.
So if you look at 2019 to 20, and then the next 3 years, you're looking at a leap of 7 to 10, from 7 additional classrooms to 10, 3 extra classrooms in just that 2-year period. And then Lower Merion, if you keep the status quo, 4 to 8, it's doubling the number in the last 2 years of projection when the projections are the least reliable. So I'm not sure it's the wisest thing to use that year, as our goal. The number, Dr. McGinley, you just mentioned about the 5.2 versus the 4.46 is more expensive at Harrington. That's assuming we build permanent addition, not the modular course is about half that cost if we go the modular route.
The point is, we have expenses at Lower Merion no matter what. Even if we do the 10 classrooms at Harrington, we still have to renovate this
Yeah, that's
building.
fine, but you might not need the 3rd floor. And that's the most substantial cost. We also talked about, you mentioned that we brought the admin building up to code, but that was for code as it's used today, not as a classroom building, and there might be additional inquiries like the stairwells, are they large enough? Things that could be run very high dollars. We don't really know where that will take us.
No, that's another answer we're pursuing.
Yeah. I mean, there are
think
things
we're in
yet to
good
be
shape.
explored that could add to the cost significantly. That's it. Thank you.
I have a couple of comments, questions as well. Just quickly, Dr. Marseille, on the honors courses offered at Harrington, is that courses or sections? So it says, 60 honors courses. Do we have 60 honors courses or 60 sections of honors courses? Similarly, AP, 25 AP courses. I don't think we have 20 AP courses. I don't think we have 20 AP courses. We have 20 sections of AP courses. Is that correct?
I'm going to have to check on that, but I believe those are courses.
So we have
For
60
AP, for
different honors?
AP, for AP courses, we have 20 AP courses.
Okay, well then, all right, good.
What I will do is I will check the 60 honors, but I am very confident that we have 20 AP courses.
Yeah, it's, I mean, if you think of it just like, English 1 honors, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah, that's
yeah,
why it counts like
does add
that.
up. You're
Yes.
you're right, you're right. The second thing is, I just want to point out on the slide about IB and the Penn State program, of the 196 students in the IB program, 15 are from the BC attendance area. That was the number we got from Mr. Everslage the other night. And in the Penn State program, there are 0 students from the BC attendance area in the Penn State program.
That is correct.
So
This year.
this year, well, but is it only, it's over 2 years, right? How many?
No, it is over 2 years. I'm saying this year there are no kids.
Right, right.
Yeah, I don't know what
Okay.
last year's number was.
Okay, so, I mean, I think we need to just be careful how much we talk about the Penn State program drawing BC students.
Yeah,
'Cause-
that slide is not about the drawing BC students. That slide's about the fact that what existed at Lower Merion was at Harrison High School in 2008 was a partial offering of the school district curriculum, and what's offered now is an enhanced version of the school district curriculum.
Okay, great, very good. I had a question about the use of the A building. If you could pull up the slide that shows the second floor of it says DAO classroom conversion concept, and it has that one corridor that's pink. So there are 3 rooms if you go around the corner, that were once classrooms that I think are still classroom size. And I'm guessing that you didn't reclaim those because you wanted to cut the building off at a certain point and keep the students on one side and the administration on the other. However, if the second floor is ready to accept students with HVAC and the group bathrooms, would it not be easier to maybe move those 3, or even, and maybe take 3 of those rooms, use them as classrooms, and take the administrators that are in those 3 rooms and put them up on the 3rd floor? Then you could use the wall air conditioner, the window air conditioners and what have you, and it might be a less expensive option in using the LM building. So I throw that out
The second
there.
floor does not have updated HVAC. Only the first floor of this building has updated HVAC. So if we have students on the second floor, on an ongoing basis, for 1 year, we could do it. But on an ongoing basis, that needs an update on the HVAC. The bathrooms are in place on the second floor.
But again, it would be less expensive if you only
Right.
needed.
We're going to get a figure on what
Right.
it would cost.
But what I'm saying is, can we get a figure on if we use that entire, I mean, I think it would be much less expensive, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We'd have 8 classrooms plus 2 on the bottom, that's 10. That might be enough to cover us on the projections, and then we wouldn't need to spend the extra money to do the 3rd floor, so that might be more cost effective.
And you could be correct, but there's also the need for science labs, and those aren't the rooms that are large enough or configured in a large enough way that we could fit in what we need for science labs.
Oh, so the
That's why
3rd floor has the bigger rooms?
Third floor rooms, if you look, there were science labs up there. There were some pretty large spaces on that side of the building, and so
These
when
4
we
rooms
target
here.
4 science labs, we would be putting them back where there had been science labs. They were oversized classrooms, and that's why that's attractive to us for long-term use.
Yeah, okay,
Temporary
I mean-
thing, year or 2,
Right.
you might be able to do something else.
Okay, I see that. That makes a lot of sense. Thank you. And on the slide that has the LM, the DAO upgrades, does that 4.46 include the 611 for the covered walkway?
No, it does not.
Okay, so that's 6 plus the 611, should we choose to go that route for a covered walkway? So that cost estimate. And then my final question, on the second to last, oh no, it's not the second to last slide. On the slide with the classroom needs, with the pink, green, and yellow lines across it. It says classroom requirements over time, numerical. It would be, well, it's 14, but.
There it is. Okay.
So in this, you have under 1516 for LM, you have 3 additional classrooms when the students are 73 over 1,400. And at Harriton, on that same yellow band, you go 50 over and then 69 over, and for both of those you have 0. And while I think, you know, as I've been as I've said many times, I question whether we're going to get to those numbers, so it's maybe a moot point anyway. But I think in terms of planning and consistency, those should probably be listed as 2 classrooms or 2 or 3 classrooms in 21, 22.
For consistency, I agree.
You know, just for the, yeah, whatever. So that's all I have.
I think you mentioned it at the facilities meeting, but does the 4.46 million include science labs?
It does,
At the
yes.
DA, it does include it?
Yes.
And then for Harriton, how many science labs do you anticipate would need to be included if we maintain the status quo?
And we end up with 10 classrooms
Correct.
over there, we would need 3 or 4 labs there also.
Right.
Okay,
And that's not in that 5.2 million number.
okay, but that was, okay, that's new.
That's left at the end as something that we need to clarify.
And I heard that, it was on the facilities, that's, okay. And I'm going to state the obvious, the way that you configure the addition on Harriton, it's fully integrated into the existing structure so that there's flow. No students have to go outside. The building is one, correct? You know,
Yes, that's correct. For the
And
permanent concept, yes.
And then we wouldn't have to adapt our programming, like they're doing at Lower Merion for the 9th graders, where you're going to have half the time.
I'm not
spent.
qualified to comment on programming
Okay.
or curriculum.
We wouldn't have to make what I would call, well, make an adjustment to the way that the.
We're going to be
curriculum-
using the DAO building no matter what. We'll have students here going outside no matter what.
But at the, if we build the addition onto Harriton, the way, we wouldn't need to have a 9th grade, a portion of the building dedicated to 9th graders. We'd be able to deliver the curriculum the way we currently are doing.
We would probably go to that English and social studies in 9th grade. We see having 9th grade in a somewhat isolated setting as a way that we can actually add to the program. We don't see it as a takeaway.
For 6th grade and middle school.
Yeah.
I just thought I do have one other comment. On the 10th day enrollment numbers, the net change in students in the district this year over projected is we're up by 137 students. So, however, if you just look at kindergarten and first grade, it's we're up 146 students. Kindergarten, first and second, we're up 164 students. So the bulk of the number, as a matter of fact, considering the net is 139, or I'm sorry, 137, that means that throughout the rest of the report, the numbers are low, with the exception, 10th grade is already in our high schools, that's up 14, and 7th grade is, I don't know what's in the water for the 7th graders, so what's going on, but the 7th grade is up 28. almost all the others are flat or down. So I think,
We're 177 kids more in September than we were last September, overall, 177.
okay, that's fine. I'm talking about
Projections.
projections,
Right.
which
So
gets
we're
back
running ahead of the projections.
in the lowest grades.
Right.
But not in the upper grades. So we're talking, third grade, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years before third grade, or 6 years, I guess, if you do the math, before sixth grade gets to ninth grade. So, I just continue to emphasize the fact that these are projections and not actual, we're not promising these numbers in the years ahead. We're saying these are where we think they might be, not where we know they will be.
And the only thing I would say, it's not, we're not the only ones that think that. We hired outside
The-
experts.
I'm
to-
sorry,
to
let
think
me
about that,
rephrase.
too.
Our professional demographer, whom we hired from outside the district, has made a projection that suggests this. They are not promising, our professionals are not promising that these will be the numbers. Our
And so
professionals
far,
are
our
suggesting.
enrollment's
that
running
they
a
will.
little ahead of what they projected.
In certain grades. 12th grade is down 7, 11th grade is down 11, 10th grade is up 14, 9th grade is down 16. 8th grade is at 3 over, 7th grade is over 28, 6th grade is down 4, 5th grade is down 20, 4th grade is down 14, 3rd grade is at 2 plus 2, and then kindergarten, first and second are up 164. So the bulk of the additional students that we're seeing as compared to the projections are in kindergarten, first and second grade. That's all my point. And I understand that these numbers, all the projected numbers are coming from a professional outside demographer.
So Diane, I think what you're saying is that we should see this as a bit of a cautionary tale, because often kids may start in the district, but they may end up in other schools as they approach high school. So just because kids start in the district does not mean they materialize as high school students in the district. I have a question regarding.
That's not true.
Well,
That's just not true. If you read the DeJong-Healy report, it talks about the cohort survival ratios applied, and the experience of the last several years has been that those cohorts are growing. Mr. Gadan has presented it in 40 different places in the last year and a half, so your statement is just not true.
That's how the numbers seem to be playing out this year, is what we are seeing. But anyway, I don't want to argue that. I had a question regarding, it's on page 4, the Harriton IB program. The percentages of students in IB, those percentages are percentages of Harriton High School students, not district students, is that correct? So that's just the percentage, 32% of Harriton students, 32.7% of Harriton students are in IB, and 19.8% of Harriton juniors and seniors are in IB. Okay, I just wanted to make sure I understood that that was not a district-wide percentage and that that's how we're conveying it. I have another question on classroom planning, which is page 15, and lead time required. So with the most intensive, if you will, timeline needed, it's no more than 24 months or 2 years, is that correct?
Yes, the assumption there is that design and land development approval could proceed simultaneously.
Okay.
And if we were able to get all of that done in 12 months, then we could bid in 2 months and construct in 10 months.
Okay, so if we're not really anticipating either building going over a bubble until the, what is it, the 17-18 or 18-19 school year, is that correct?
I'm sorry, going over what number?
Going over the required number to precipitate additional.
15,
classrooms.
16, we would be using 4 classrooms in the DAO.
At LM?
Yeah.
For LM growth. So if we did nothing,
No, I'm sorry, that's with expanded choice. If we did nothing, I'd go back to that chart.
if we did nothing,
If we did nothing, we have just bumped over 1,400 at Lower Merion in the
In the
15-16.
18-19 year? So, oh, I'm sorry.
15-16.
The 15-16 year?
Yes.
You'd need one classroom. And under any scenario, that classroom would be at the DAO, under any scenario. So really, we don't hit any kind of a crisis point for adding anything beyond what we would need at LM under current status quo projections until, if I'm reading this right, the 18-19 school year? Correct?
Right, although, as you can see there, you would need 3 classrooms.
Right,
For-
but
in addition
we
for
would
Lower
need
Merion.
2 years lead time to do anything more than the couple of classrooms that we need at the most, correct?
That's correct.
So we know we have to renovate some classrooms at the DAO. That seems to be a pressure point that we have to deal with right now, and that's under any scenario. But under any scenario, we don't have to pull a trigger until the end of until the summer of 2016. We have that much time to plan and to see how things play out and to see how enrollments go.
When you
and
say
to-
any scenario, you mean if nothing happens, if the
Yes.
same boundaries are in place today continue? Okay, that, I
don't
was
have to
confused
make
because you
any
kept saying
changes.
under any scenario.
Under any change, we don't have to make any changes to buildings or anything else except to accommodate current growth at LM until the summer of 2016. And we'd still have lead time to get all of our land planning done, our construction done, our programming done, and all of that.
But I think the
Or
same
wait,
holds
wait.
true.
Is that correct?
Yeah, we
Yeah.
would need, if you're talking about maintaining our current boundaries, 18-19 is the year that we need additional classroom space at Harriton High School. Before that, we need additional classroom space at Lower Merion High School.
So anything that we would do now would put more pressure on Lower Merion High School, where there's already an over-enrollment. Yeah.
If you do.
Any change that we do now would increase enrollment at Lower Merion,
Yes, that's the point, is to increase enrollment at Lower
but
Merion.
there's no reason to
There
physically.
is if you don't want to redistrict at that time, because if you don't gradually increase the number of kids who come over to Lower Merion by choice, excuse me, can I finish? Then you will actually have to redistrict at that time, which means you will have to compel a group of kids who are at Harriton to come over to Lower Merion. And my concern, frankly, is that the same group who was compelled to go to Harriton because they live closest to Harriton are also the kids who live closest to Lower Merion. And so you will now tell that same group of children that you said had to go to Harriton that they will have to go to Lower Merion.
These numbers aren't saying that.
These numbers are saying that.
These numbers are not
If you
saying
do
that at
not-
all.
If
Because
you asked a
you have-
question and you're correct, you are correct that you could wait if you are willing to actually redistrict if you're going to wait until the 2 years prior, you will not have enough time to get kids over through voluntary.
You would
That's the
still
problem.
have, you would still have 2 years lead time which is the maximum amount of lead time that you'd need.
You would have to
to
build.
build at Harriton or to put temporary
Oh, right, if
classrooms
you're
at
at Harriton,
Harriton.
sure.
If there's an anticipated,
Right.
then you'd have more idea as to whether or not it's a temporary bubble or it's a more permanent bubble.
Right, so we can
So we
choose to
could
either.
save a lot of money potentially. We could preserve academic and co-curricular programming opportunity, and we would not have to we would not have to follow a self-imposed rush deadline.
I disagree with you on the self-imposed rush deadline as a description, but I also disagree with you because your assumption is that you would then build at Harriton, and we're looking at the numbers here, and the numbers look like it would cost more to build at Harriton because you're also going to have to continue adding classrooms to Lower Merion. That's the question here, and we're waiting to find out what the answers are to that because we don't actually have the full cost estimates at this point, which was what was reported in facilities and what was just reported. The other thing I'd like to point out, which is the issue around the projections, which is I would like to commend Dr. McGinley for asking us to go, asking for the board's support to, use an external expert in order to gain the projections, which is something that hasn't happened in the past, and as well is that we have actually had 2 other external consultants look at those numbers as well and to make sure that they felt that the demographers or the enrollment studies were actually at the standard of practice. So I'd like to just, because of all the discussions around the enrollment numbers, I'd like to make it clear that, Dr. McGinley asked us to do that. We supported the idea of doing that, and we did do that. So we've gone out for external experts to look at those, to look at our enrollment projections, which again, we haven't done in the past. And we've had 2 other external demographers or consultants who looked at them for the standard of practice. So we've reviewed those numbers quite a few times, trying to come up with the best estimates possible, given the fact that it is actually, of course, estimates, because that's what we have to do. We won't know the actual numbers until the kids are, appear, and we have to plan and we have to make policies. So most school districts use projections in order to try and project what the enrollments are going to be.
We made a commitment as a district many years ago, before I was on this board, to try to build 2 high schools that were of relatively equal size, to not have a large high school and a disproportionately larger high school and a disproportionately smaller high school. We did that for several very strong academic and co-curricular reasons. Those reasons are still valid. There are only so many editors of either school newspaper, there are only so many captains of teams, there are only so many parts in a show, there are only so many spots on a basketball team. And we are taking away leadership, participatory, and opportunities for young adults to connect with faculty if we do that, if we change what has been a commitment in our district for many years. And before we do that, I think we need to think through what the implications are for all of our students at all of our high schools.
I also want to add, it's unfortunate that we've called this whole process, calling it about choice expansion. It's really about accommodating a projected increase in growth. And really our focus has been on recent meetings on that. I think that's a fortunate turn. Secondly, no matter how many times we review the expert reports, it doesn't change the unreliability of projections 7 and 8 years out. So we should just, we all agree the numbers, the actual attendance did not jibe with our own projections. So Dr. McGinley, and I wholeheartedly agree, it was a good move, and we probably have better numbers now, but it doesn't change the unreliability of the numbers, way out. And then the last thing I want to just mention, if we're talking about the cost comparison one versus the other, you're really looking at dollar for dollar. There are a lot of things excluded from these numbers, like the pressure on the facilities. So if you look at scenario 3 and 40% choose Howard, if the choice is expanded, 6% choose Lower Merion, you're talking about 1,733 students at Lower Merion. It's a huge pressure on existing facilities other than classrooms that won't change at all. The lunchroom won't change, the gyms won't change, parking won't change, maybe there's very little we can do there. And there are ramifications of that, probably more adverse cost-wise if you put more people on the Lower Merion site versus the Harron site, that we should really, before we talk about, comparing, if you want an apples-to-apples comparison, you need those numbers involved in that. Thanks.
The only thing I would say about the other parts of the buildings, like, the auditorium and the cafeteria, is that if you stay with what we have, we still end up with 4 lunches in both high schools. And so there's no plan in either price thing to make the cafeteria larger or those other kinds of things.
But the fields are fixed, the gyms are fixed. I mean, I don't, I'm sure you'll figure something out, but it can't be as ideal as having 200 fewer students in one building versus the other. And you could accommodate almost, again, I go back to my earlier point, there's a pretty massive leap in these projections in the most unreliable years, which, suggests to me, if you could wait. If you can't wait, you can't wait. But if you can wait, it behooves us to wait somewhat to see what happens given the vagaries, like Diane was mentioning earlier. So I know we have a lot more information yet to receive from administration as studies come in.
And I always say it, but in terms of the cost, you don't look at the delta between the two different, I'm sorry, Dan, you may go. If I-
you. I just want to go back to Lynn's point before I was twice overlooked, inadvertently, I know, that no matter what, right, the original goal was 1,200 in each high school. There's no scenario under which we have 1,200 students in each high school. There are more kids. It's just a question of, do we distribute them exactly equally, and under no scenario are they. In some scenarios, Harriton is the bigger school. There's no way we can have two exactly equal-sized high schools. And I've talked to statisticians and education experts, and these numbers are statistically insignificant in terms of the educational experience of a student in a school with 1,477 versus 1,293. There's just no statistical difference in holistically or educational
But
outcomes.
1,700 is quite different.
Or we take that at face value, we should have those people come here and speak to us. I mean, rather than take it by word of mouth.
Back to the numbers, but real quickly, you're looking at the delta between the two different projects, proposed projects, but the critical, to me, the critical factor is what impact it will have on our operating budget in terms of borrowings and if you're talking $1 million difference between the two, in the long run on the operating budget, it'll probably be pennies. And also, there are other, and we're far from getting final costs because there's so many different aspects that we haven't gotten numbers for. But it's also to remember there are certain intangible benefits to particular projects that we need to look at, which may be more, have more value than the actual dollars in terms of what's best for our students. So we have to look at the whole picture before we make a decision, and it shouldn't just be based on the dollars that we see right here.
Just a comment and a question. We keep talking about this, the schools were built for $1,250, not $1,200. Right? The number was, however, for those of us who went through that whole process, the discussion went around and around that there is the potential that the school district could grow larger than we thought. And so there were two things that we did in anticipation of that. Number one was we tried to design the buildings in such a way that spaces could be reclaimed as classroom spaces and that the building could be used flexibly. So while, yes, they are designed for $1,250 at optimum perfect level, they were also designed with the idea that they could accommodate more than $1,250. So I think Dr. McGinley and the administration has done a good job of trying to identify that number. They've set it at about 1,400. I think that's probably, pretty plus or minus within a realm of realism of what these buildings can actually hold. But that was designed we were designed so that they could be flexible spaces. Furthermore, we also, when we discussed leaving this building in place, we discussed if we did get to the point where we had numbers way out of line of what we thought, that we would have this. So there was some forward thinking in terms of ability to accommodate additional students if they should come. So I just want to throw that out there. My request is, this classroom requirements the projection numbers that we have assume that expanded choice starts next year. And what I would really like to see, if possible, would be a chart where it shows the expanded choice starting in 16-17. Or what do the numbers look like if expanded choice doesn't start till 16-17? Or what does the number look like if expanded choice doesn't start till 17-18? And that might help clarify the perception, because you're reading the numbers one way, Melissa, and I think certainly I'm reading them another way in terms of when that tipping point is. And if we saw whether, in fact, if we waited 2 years, could we accommodate the enrollment differences strictly by expanding choice at 60-40, 40-60, 50-50, 25-75? Or is there in fact a pressure to get this decision made sooner? So, these numbers, so if I look at the 2017-18 numbers, because of the fact that it started next year, all 4 years of phasing in of the expanded choice are in those numbers. So I can't really look at the 17, 18 numbers and say, oh, well, if we wait till 17, 18, that's what the numbers are going to be. Because as you said, it will have been cold turkey. We need to, I mean, I agree that if we're going to do this, we need to do it over time. So I'd just like to see, I think it would be very valuable for me to see how the numbers tip if we wait till, if we apply the same process, but start it in 16, 17 instead of 14, 15, or if we started in 17, 18 instead of 14, 15. So I don't know if that's something that we can do, but I would very much like to see that.
Are there other questions?
I just had one quick question. Pat, the number 5.2 million for building at Harriton seems like it's out of kilter with the Welsh Valley Middle School. Can you elaborate on that?
You mean by cost of classroom?
Cost
or
of
by-
classroom, cost per classroom.
Is that something you'd be prepared to answer, Pat, or is it
Probably
something you'd have
not,
to look
no.
at?
I mean, I got the estimate from, the architect did the estimate. I had it checked by somebody else.
Wouldn't the concept be more similar to what our first number was at Gladwin, where we were talking about building 4 classrooms on top of 4 existing classrooms? And, I mean, as a point of comparison?
Yeah, your
Remember when we
multi-story
originally-
is going to cost more than,
But you're
3
saying
stories
this-
is going to cost more than
This is costing
2-story.
less per classroom than the Welsh Valley.
But
But we
Welsh
can relook it in that light.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so is everyone good for the moment? Can we move on for the moment? Okay, not overlooking anyone. Sorry, Marissa. Dr. McGinn.
I just want to say one thing more without, at the risk of bringing up additional issues, but, you know, at some point, we should all be really thankful that the high schools were built when they were built, because with the vision that the board had, because had you waited and the economy tanked in the way that it did, maybe only one high school got built. With the implication of Act 1, maybe no high schools got built. So for all of the aggravation that we went through in 2008 and 2009 and all the turmoil that the 2 new high schools created and all the arguments we've been having these past couple weeks, we ought to just pause and be really glad that everybody on those boards and the community, to whatever extent, came together, got it done when they got it done, or we would have a whole other mess on our hands today.
Thank you, very well said.
Okay, so to the action items. Under Human Resources, I'm recommending the Board of School Directors approve human resource action items as listed in Exhibits HR 1 through HR 8, and that includes the appointment of a number of people, including Diana McIntosh, who, pending your vote, will be our new Supervisor of Student Achievement Programs, and should you vote in her favor unanimously, would be nice, then we would introduce her after you make a motion and have a vote on that motion.
Okay, so do I have a motion to approve? Thank you, and a second? Second. Thank you. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? It's unanimous.
Okay. Congratulations, Diana. Would you just come up to the microphone and just say hello to the board and to the community? Congratulations on your appointment.
Hello, I just would like to say that I'm very honored to be working or starting to work with Lower Merion. I have 2 children that go to BC and Lower Merion High School, so I'm very passionate. I come from William Penn School District as an assistant principal for curriculum and instruction. I also worked with the School District of Philadelphia as a multilingual manager, which is ESL. And I have my master's in reading, special education, and ESL. So I'm definitely very, very excited, and I want to see the achievement gap close.
Thank you. Thank you so much, and good luck to you with us.
Yes, thank you.
I'm
Welcome.
sorry. Before we go off of HR, can I just make a comment on there's a teacher who is resigning from the school district, and I just wanted to, her name's Nancy Ferguson, and she's taking an assistant principal's position in the Radnor School District. And I just have to say, my daughter had Mrs. Ferguson in middle school, and she was definitely one of the top. My children had phenomenal teachers throughout their tenure in the Lower Merion schools, really phenomenal teachers. But I have to say Nancy Ferguson is probably one of the top 5 that they had. She is a true gem, and I'm going to have to give Mike Kelly a hard time about stealing her from us. But I wish her the best, and I think she'll do a great job.
Thank you. Next, I'm recommending that the Board of School Directors approve an independent consultant contract for David Robinson to provide professional services to the district for the period of September 1 through June 30 per Exhibit HR 9.
Are there any questions? Do you have a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
Thank you. Do you have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you. Next is the report of the Curriculum Committee. Dr. Van Lynch.
Thank you, Dr. McGinley. The Curriculum Committee met on Tuesday, September 10th in the Board Administration Room. We had a number of curriculum initiatives, K-12 curriculum initiatives presented by Dr. Marseille and other members of the elementary and secondary administrative team. What I'll share tonight is a highlight of what was presented. The meeting agenda and supporting documents will be available on the website. We had a number of focus areas addressed at the meeting. Dr. Marseille also opened with some of the professional development that took place over the summer months, the leadership retreat and NTAP in particular. Focus areas the committee was presented with included the following: providing instructional and pedagogical support for the alignment and implementation of PA core standards, supporting the implementation of Act 82 and the Danielson Framework for Teaching, developing and strengthening STEM educational partnerships, continued culturally proficient practices and lesson development, K-12 literacy focus across the curriculum, specifically our PALP fellows and professional development, K-12 STEM focus again, and finally supporting and balancing the holistic needs of our students. Additional information was presented that addressed the continued enhancement of K-12 gifted education, and our K-12 curriculum initiatives updates concluded with a discussion of various student services and supports across all grade levels. Again, specifically instructional support labs, professional development for students with IEPs and 504s, and the improvement of communication with parents and district stakeholders. Our updates included the area of Act 82 teacher effectiveness. Dr. Marseille presented the Act 82 teacher effectiveness model. The previous plan was phased out last year, and the new plan will be fully implemented beginning this school year. This is state mandated. The Pennsylvania Department of Education rating tool will be used now to input information and formulate final teacher ratings. The NCLB waiver and Pennsylvania performance profile was also covered. Pennsylvania was approved for a No Child Left Behind waiver as of August 20th of this year, and the waiver applies to all public schools and local education agencies. This waiver eliminates adequate yearly progress and changes the focus on accountability measures, which will include now test participation rate, graduation attendance rates, closing achievement gaps for all students, and closing the achievement gaps of historically underperforming students. Doctors Doria DeRosa and Ms. Aconchia Mesa shared with the committee that the extended day program for students scoring below basic or basic on the PSSAs would run again this year. The program is funded by the state's Accountability Block Grant and is also supplemented by district funds. 110 students qualify for the program, 63 in 5th grade and 47 in 4th grade. And then we had a number of summer school program highlights. Our teachers and administrators were quite busy providing programs and instructional support for over 800 elementary, middle, and high school students. The newest program that was presented to the committee was the Algebra Preview program in its first year with 15 students. And our next meeting will be on Tuesday, October 8th at 8:30 a.m. in this room. Thank you.
Thank you. The agenda should have indicated that this section of the agenda belongs to Dr. Marseille, but since it doesn't, I'll move them this time, and you can move them next time.
Yes?
I mean, you want to move them? Go ahead. You can move. Go ahead. The administration recommends the Board of School Directors approve educational service items as listed. These are overnight trip requests per CS1 through CS11.
I had a question for the solicitor. If we might have a child partaking in one of these, do we need to recuse ourselves from this vote?
On a trip?
That's a good question. That would have a lot of us, I think, actually. I never thought of that before.
Can I just say, a lot of these were returned or redone, and more information was given, and thank you very much. They are much more comprehensive, and you know, the only thing I'll say is I hope that we're looking for consistency between the programs, but
well, that's why they're not all back on the agenda.
Yeah, okay. So I really appreciate the time and effort that went into making those changes.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve? Thank you. A second? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? The motion passes.
Next, under Student Services, the administration recommends the Board of School Directors approve the student service items as listed, agreements for students receiving non-district educational services per exhibits SS1 through SS8.
Any questions? Do I have a motion to approve? Thank you. Second?
I second.
Thank you. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
Next is a report of the Facilities and Purchasing Committee. Mr. Novick.
Thank you, Dr. McGinley. The Facilities Committee met on Thursday morning, September 19th. We reviewed the list of bills, the purchasing report, change orders, and other monthly updates. Among the highlights, we reviewed a proposal to allow off-site online registration by parents and for changes to parental records, which is exciting. We talked about at length the status of the facilities expansion projects at Gladwin, Penn Valley, Bala Cynwyd, and Welsh Valley, and the bid openings for the projects at Gladwin and Penn Valley for the modular classroom additions, the permanent modularly built classroom additions, which came in well over budget, and Pat Kinnan will talk about that in a minute. We talked about the completion of the enhanced security entrance projects. I think Dr. McGinley mentioned it earlier at BC Middle School, Penn Wynne, Penn Valley, and Gladwin Elementary School. And then finally, we talked about the update on the high school enrollment expansion, the high school enrollment, which we talked about earlier this evening.
Excuse me, we just want to clarify, because it sounded like you said that the projects came in over budget. That isn't what you meant, is it?
No, the bidding for the construction, of the additional classrooms. Pat will talk more about it.
We just wanted to make sure that we didn't have projects running over budget.
Well, that yet remains to be seen.
Mr. Gannan.
So this is not a nightmare. I am up here again, but not going to talk about high school. Going to give you a brief update. Pardon?
We'll be the judge of that.
Update on other enrollment expansion projects, in particular at the elementary and middle schools. Starting out with work that we've done this summer. At Bala Cynwyd Middle School, as the superintendent mentioned earlier, we are creating classrooms by converting interior space. In this case, the old wrestling gym, or the multi-purpose gym located there where the red square is, now looks like this, 2 classrooms. Also down in the lower level of the school, same level as the cafeteria, we have converted locker rooms into 2 classrooms that now look like this. We also moved the main office. We moved it up toward the entrance, and the primary reason here was to gain the ability to have more control over who is entering the building during the day, to be able to screen visitors. So there we are at the beginning. This is kind of a schematic of how it works now. You come in the front door. This is after school begins in the morning. We have a new vestibule wall here, and these doors are closed. So visitors must enter the new office, be checked in, be screened, and then they're allowed to enter into the school. So there is that new vestibule wall with the doors closed in this picture. And with the doors closed, you go to the left and you go inside the main office, and that's where you get checked in. We moved the entire administration area, so it also includes things like the The workroom, offices for the assistant principals, and the principal. This happens to be the principal's office. Gladwin Modular Classroom went into service last week, as the superintendent mentioned, later than we had expected, but it is in service now, and it's now the home of some happy third graders. Likewise, at Welsh Valley, we put that into service last week. That's the 6th grade team. One of the 6th grade teams is out there, and here's a couple of shots of those classrooms. In each case, we have 4 classrooms inside of one building. The building at Gladwin contains restrooms as well as classrooms. And this is the status of our contingency on these projects. We're still within the contingency that we had set forth. Again, there are many change orders pending and many settlements to be done based on things that happened this summer. Let me move ahead now to the bids that were opened almost 2 weeks ago now for permanent construction at Gladwin and Penn Valley. As Mr. Novak said, these bids came in over the estimate. We had designed these and planned to contract them out using a method of construction that we referred to as an off-site modular construction. In other words, the classrooms are built in pieces, but they're built off-site. They're permanent construction. They're completely finished out. They're put on trucks, trucked to the site, and then craned into place. And it had advantages for us in terms of the disruption on site, how long it took to put them on site, and subsequent effect on the neighborhood and the educational program of the school. Unfortunately, what we found when we opened bids and then did further investigation is that this is not a method of construction that contractors around here are very familiar with. The contractor who does this that we used as a basis of design, and there are several, so there was some competition, had increased his prices as we went through the design, and we had incorporated that, but apparently he increased them again when he found out that there weren't that many people bidding the job. And there was a contractor who did bid, who has done this before with Gilbert Architects, but again, he thought he was one or maybe 2 general contractors, and so he decided that he would increase his bid. On the part of the other contractors, the HVAC, the plumbing, and the electrical, there was a lot of confusion because a lot of that kind of work is done, or the work that they like to do is done off-site by the modular guy. And so their job, when the modulars show up, is to mate things together and hook it into the rest of the building. And so there was a confusion there. Whenever there is confusion in this sort of situation, people either don't bid or they throw a big number at it. And that's what we saw. So what we are recommending is that we go back and rebid the Gladwin job using conventional construction, which will push our timeline out for occupancy to December of next year versus September. It means that we would have to keep our modular classrooms on site, which would cost another 4 months worth of lease. But we believe that we can achieve some cost savings by doing this, somewhere in the order of about $20 a square foot. We recommend, however, that we go ahead with the Penn Valley job, even though we're over budget, because we want to remain on schedule and make sure that we have additional classrooms available for next September. Were we to change and do that by conventional construction, we would have to go back and very genuinely consider whether or not we needed modular classrooms in order to provide the swing space necessary because of the increased disruption to the process. But we also want to go back and change our whole design concept for Welsh Valley and Bala-Cynwyd. You recall we still have to do the Bala-Cynwyd storage addition. And there's no real cost to change because we're not that far down the road on this, but we think we can save dollars there as well. So this is a picture of the entire program if we were to accept the Penn Valley bid as we have now, and we keep the cost estimates for the other projects the same. And you can see that puts us in the hole to the tune of about $180,000 for the whole program. However, by going back and changing Gladwin, Welsh Valley, and Bala-Cynwyd to conventional construction and getting a savings of about $20 a square foot at Gladwin, about $10 a square foot at Welsh Valley, we think we can turn that around and bring the overall program back up over or back in the positive territory. As far as project schedule, as I mentioned, at Gladwin, we would be extend our construction period out here through December. At Penn Valley, we would stay on the original construction and have those classrooms ready for next September. We don't anticipate a change in the concept or the schedule right now for Bala Cynwyd or Welsh Valley, although we're still looking into the Welsh Valley piece of it. And then lastly, let me talk about two other projects we did this summer that the superintendent described, where we created secure entrance areas into schools that did not previously have them. This is a picture courtesy of our friends at Google. The arrow shows the entrance to the school off the teacher parking lot side or the Suffolk Road side. And when school starts in the morning and all the doors get locked, this then is the way that you enter the school. And what we did is we have an existing entry point here, and we went to the room right next door, and instead of using it for instruction, we've decided to move all the administrative staff over here. And this is like phase one of a two-phase project where we're going to move the entire office over into this building and the room next to it. And the other phase will be done next summer. So the idea is this room already had an exterior door, so people could come in, we could screen them. What we did was add a small vestibule inside so that somebody can come in, be screened via intercom system, and then be admitted, show ID, sign in, et cetera, and then gain entrance to the rest of the school. That's what the outside door looks like, and this is what the vestibule looks like on the inside. Moving over to Penn Valley, again, an overhead shot. This is the main entrance to the school. And again, we have a set of vestibule doors here that we can close when school is in session during the day. And we created a new area here, kind of an enhanced vestibule, where we could have a staff member sitting and admitting people and screening them before they're allowed to come into the school. So that's what it looks like if you're standing in the vestibule. You see the staff member. And then here is where people would enter the school as they leave the sign-in area. And as I pointed out at the Facilities Committee meeting, we were lucky enough to get a real live model to pose here to pretend that they were visitors signing in. And lastly, I'm extremely pleased to announce that the Arnold Field track renovation project is complete. And I'd be happy to answer any questions about that.
So Pat, I just want to, just for clarity, so the two projects, Penn Valley Gladwin as bid, were about $1,075,000 over in the aggregate, $489 for Penn Valley and $586 for Gladwin.
That's correct.
And so the $20 per square foot number, just to put it in perspective, I think my notes from Thursday indicate that's $110,000.
That's correct.
So on those two projects, if you take the 110 off of the $1,075,000, you're talking like $950 over budget plus or minus on those two projects, where we stand today, at least for the.
That's correct. And if we get $10 at Welsh Valley, it adds another $260,000, which still doesn't get us very far down. So basically, what we're taking is previous dollars that had been available in the whole program because estimates came in under original estimates, and we would be balancing it out, right?
So it's unfortunate that we were kind of sold on this process and at the end of the day, it didn't come to fruition.
I agree.
Okay. Thank you.
Under Business Office and Finance, we have 4 recommended action items. I'll take them all in one motion. Approve the list of bills for payment. Approve the finance report dated August 2013. Approve the license agreement with CBA Sports Group LLC and declare items as surplus property, and they are in Exhibit BF 1 and 2.
Any questions? Do you have a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
Thank you. Second? Thank you. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
Under Facilities and Operations, the administration recommends that the Board of School Directors does hereby resolve and award the bids to the contractor's name in Exhibit FO-1 for the 13-14 musical instruments and for the alterations and additions at Penn Valley, the following contractors: general construction, plumbing construction, HVAC construction, and electrical construction. Also, we recommend that you reject the bids for the additions and alterations at Gladwin Elementary, and also reject the combined additions and alterations at Gladwin Elementary and Penn Valley Elementary Schools.
I was going to move to approve if there are no questions. Move to approve.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
We have the following agreements that we're recommending for approval. Approve the agreement with InfoSnap, subject to solicitor's review. Approve the agreement with Atlas Transportation. Approve the agreement with Germantown Cab. And approve the increase in professional services fees to Barry Isett and Associates in their exhibit FO2 through FO4.
Move to approve.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
And the remaining action items, the administration recommends that Board of School Directors approve the submission of Plan Con D for the Walsh Valley Middle School project to the Department of Education, and also approve the submission of Plan Con E for Walsh Valley Middle School to PDE. And then made the following change orders to the parking lot improvements at Belmont Hills Elementary, and also change order for classroom and office modifications at Ballacoma Middle School and their exhibits FO5 through FO8.
Move to approve.
Do you have a second? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion's passed. Okay, we're now moving on to the business. There is no old business. We're moving on to new business. Can I have a report of the policy committee by Suba Robinson?
Thank you, Dr. Gilbert. The policy committee meeting was held on September 13th, 2013 in this room. We discussed policy 806, which is up for a first reading, child student abuse. This policy is coming up for a first reading to reflect that all volunteers supervising an overnight trip need to get proper clearances prior to their chaperoning a trip. In addition, we discussed AR 134A, in which the term high school was removed. It's a district-provided technology, student use, rights and responsibilities. These regulations were changed to reflect that middle school students will be issued email addresses and will be using Google Apps. AR 235 was also discussed, student rights and responsibilities. We discussed the suspension of discipline for off-campus conduct and made it permanent so that the moratorium is now technically over and the rule permanently changed. We discussed that this needs to be properly communicated to team coaches. AR 216 was also up for discussion. Procedure for administration of student records was changed to reflect changes in the law. Also, procedure to opt out of photographic images from being used by the district was noted. If you object to the use of your child's photographic image by the district in any manner, you must indicate it in writing that you do not want your child's image utilized, and this can be communicated to the school and community relations office. Policy 007, board meetings, was discussed and it was changed to reflect that language was removed about how members of the public could record public meetings to reflect the ease with which we can now do this. It will be up for a first reading in future months. AR 206, assignment of pupils within the district, was discussed, and the administration gave a brief update as to the schedule of discussing this topic. The next policy committee meeting is scheduled for October 11th at 8:30 a.m. in this room.
Thank you very much. Other committee reports. Mrs. Pollard.
Thank you, Dr. Gilbert. The Communications Committee met on September the 18th here in this room. We had recent district highlights that were brought to us by Doug Young. Our first one was that both of our high schools have received a gold certificate from LEAD. And LEAD is Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design. And it's a group by the government that talks about how we continue to have sustainable concepts in building with green concepts. And both of our high schools are very have been designed so that we are a model and we have received that gold certificate. So we should be very proud about that. Also on September the 12th, we had the moment of integration, which was the 50th anniversary celebration of the closing of the Ardmore Avenue School. There were actually two programs, one that began at the original site of the Ardmore Elementary School, and then a program that was held at Lower Merion High School. The Board of Directors also passed a resolution which will declare September the 5th as the day that will be in our history as celebrating the moment of integration. Also, Doug Young said that he was waiting to receive the results from the National Merit Scholarship finalists, and that should be available shortly. And so we're awaiting those results.
We've got it now.
We've got it now.
We do.
Okay, great. Dr. McGinley, our meeting for communications was taped because of the presentation of enrollment growth planning and expanded choice information. And Dr. McGinley brought us information regarding the enrollment growth and the expanded choice information. And this was done so that people that could not attend our meetings will be able to go to our website and get the information that's needed to be able to be informed of what's happening on the district level. Also, he said that they have added signage to all of the schools, and of course you've heard by Dr. McGinley and Mr. Ganan that now you have to have identification and you have to be buzzed in to get into any of our schools. 7 schools were secure in that area, and you've heard tonight that the 3 schools, Bala Cynwyd, Penn Wyn, and Penn Valley, now have also been made so that they are secure. And also, in addition to our regular safety drills, like our fire safety, you heard Dr. McGinley say that now there is a relocation point so that all administrators and teachers, if need be, would be able to know a point where we could be secure and meet if we were ever needed to be evacuated. It was open for discussion, and we had lots of discussion regarding the things that had been presented that night from school board members and from the community. And we will be also continuing the discussion at the facilities meeting, and our next communications meeting will be on Wednesday, October the 23rd at 8 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Pollard. What we're going to do now is we're going to move to audience recognition. And so this is the time where people can comment. It's a comment period. If you would like to comment, you need to be a resident in the district, and we have a 3-minute time limit. So if you could please come in and sign in, and then everybody should come up and sign in now. And then when you speak, please state your name and where you live.
My name is Todd Sinai, and I live in Marion Station. I'm also a real estate professor at Wharton, and your capacity issues are in large part a real estate problem. The most prudent approach to the growing enrollments is simply to wait. Waiting is also the best way to achieve the principles you all espoused at last Wednesday's Communication Committee meeting. Remember, under the DeJong-Healy status quo, Lower Merion High School is projected to be over capacity soon. Harriton will remain under capacity for the next 5 years. Expanding choice now is premature, exacerbates overcrowding at Lower Merion, and forces immediate renovation of the DAO, when there is still plenty of capacity at Harriton. Instead, waiting 2 years, and then either phasing in expanded choice starting in 2016, or adding capacity at Harriton, matches the timing of the solution with the timing of the problem. We would use the current full capacity of Harriton and wouldn't need to touch the DAO until 2017. And LMSD's own methodology shows that there is plenty of time to implement either the phase-in of expanded choice or an expansion of Harriton if we plan in fall 2015 for implementation in the fall of 2016. I will post these numbers at realclearlmsd.com. Dr. Gilbert and Dr. Van Lynch said on Wednesday that we should rely on the DeJong-Healy projections. Using those projections, phasing in expanded choice starting in 2016 avoids overcapacity at Harriton just as effectively as starting in 2014. This is true for all choice scenarios considered by the district. Dr. Gilbert fears a forced redistricting if we wait. But the DeJong-Healy numbers show that won't happen if we start in 2016. It's just not true. We can phase in choice just as slowly as the current proposal. Dr. McGinley says he prefers more time to prepare for overcrowding. Waiting gives him more time. DeJong-Healy projects that the Lower Merion will exceed capacity by no more than 1 classroom over the next 3 years. Expanding choice now accelerates the overcrowding at Lower Merion to as much as 120 students over capacity within 2 years, forcing LMSD to prepare for more overcrowding in less time. Waiting is also less risky. Expanding the choice area now doubles down on the bet of future growth at Harriton. If it doesn't materialize, and enrollments at Harriton were flat last year, we will have spent millions and exacerbated overcrowding at Lower Merion without any enrollment benefits. And if the growth is more than anticipated, we would still have plenty of time to react. Given your stated goals, there is simply no capacity-based reason to expand choice now. In all cases, risk, cost, administrative difficulty, and enrollment imbalances are reduced by waiting to start the phase-in. The prudent thing to do is wait.
Thank you.
Mike Samuelson, 4 Shirley Circle. As someone who's been in the district since 1992, I want to just a couple of things that Ms. Kugel raised. She said that we were promised equal-sized schools, but the reason why we focused on equal-sized schools was because there was a concern that there was not equal opportunities at the 2 schools as they existed. Because of Harriton's smaller size, they did not have the full complement of academic offerings that Lower Merion had. No matter what we do going forward, that primary concern is no longer there. And so when we talk about over-enrollment, there's not really over-enrollment per se. There's unequal enrollment, but that doesn't mean over-enrollment. Ms. Kugel said, well, the problem is we've got these kids, you know, there's only 1 editor of each school. Well, it doesn't matter if there are 50 extra kids who want to be an editor at Harriton compared to Lower Merion. There can only be 2 editors. If those kids are unequally distributed, you have 49 disappointed children, whether they're at Harriton or they're at Lower Merion. It's just not a consideration. That one individual may have a greater shot, a slightly greater shot of being the editor-in-chief at Lower Merion if he or she has fewer people to compete against. But the truth is, if you look at them as a whole, there are going to be just as many disappointed people, whether there's equal distribution among the schools or unequal distribution. We talk about over-enrollment or over-capacity. The truth of the matter is it's the tail wagging the dog. It's only over capacity if you don't build to capacity. What you're talking about is unequal enrollment, and whether it happens 2 years from now or 4 years from now, I don't think anybody disputes that the school district is going to be over-enrolled compared to what we projected when we all agreed to build these 2 schools. There's going to have to be a solution, and I think the greatest harm that we can cause to our students is what Ms. Gilbert suggested, which is if we guess wrong and we underbuild, you are going to make students in a cohort change schools in the middle of their high school experience. And that's going to cause far more harm than the fact that they may or may not be the captain of the football team, the soccer team, or whatever. And I think that you really have to factor that in as one of the greatest things and the greatest harm that you can do is if you guess wrong on the under-enrollment side, you can cause great harm to those students that you're going to have to pull out of a high school experience. The only other thing I can say is this idea of the 9th graders coming across. My son's in one of those modular classrooms over in Welsh Valley. I went to open school night. We had to walk outside, I think, a total of 5 times. And that didn't include, since there are no restrooms there, that if he wanted to go to the bathroom, he'd have to walk out at least once or twice. I think if the 6th graders can do it, our 9th graders can as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have to adjust this. Okay. Hi, my name is Marie Barrisford. I live in Ardmore. I'm here as a parent, mom, and teacher, so I'm an expert. And I want to thank you for your exhaustive conversations around this. I've been lucky enough to have attended the many, many, many meetings on this. And I think what just becomes clearer is that something needs to be done. And I think that the decision now is when it needs to be done. And I think that now that you've gotten this far, you really should act. I think that you have wonderful administrators who really want to do incredible things in the classroom and really push curricular and progressive education. And I think that it's time to focus on that. I think that the kids are here, and I think it's very clear that you need to make a move. So please, make it now so we can move on to what you are all so great at doing, which is educating our kids. I think we need to refocus since we're doing this again just a couple short years since you did it last time. So it sounds to me like you're all in agreement that something needs to be done. The debate is when. Just please do it now for all of our kids so we can focus on educating them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Maureen O'Leary. I'm from Narberth. I have 4 kids in the district. I just wanted to thank you all for the really thoughtful discussion and the many, many, many meetings and hours I know that you've put into this so far. It seems like a lot of people are questioning the accuracy of the projections of the number of students. I fully understand that the projections are not accurate because it's a difficult thing to do, and I commend the board for the work you've done in doing your best to get it right. I went back and looked at 10 years worth of projections. Every year the school district makes a 10-year projection as part of its budgeting process. So in 2002, we made a projection in 2003 forward. And that line is published. In 2003, we looked at that and said, oops, we were too low. So the line moved up. In 2004, we looked at that and said, oh, that was too low, and we moved the line up. We did it in 2005, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11, and I guess 12 too. Every single year, we shift that line up. So I agree the projections are just projections, and they get worse as we go out, and everything you've said is sort of true, I agree. But if you look back at history, this line moves up, moves up, moves up, moves up. It never moves down. So if you're going to assume it's incorrect, I think you have to assume it's low, not high, if you look back at the history. Thank you.
Thank you. I think, is that, is there anyone else who would like to speak? Can you please sign up now and then, okay.
Hi, my name is Susan Guthrie. I live in Marion Station. My comment is a question, which is the following. If the choice boundary is ultimately expanded Will the administration create an analogous ninth grade center at Harriton? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. At this time, I'd like to read the Sunshine Act announcements and the schedule of upcoming meetings. So in accordance with the Sunshine Law, the Board of Directors met on September 16th in executive session to discuss real estate, September 23rd in exec to discuss personnel, litigation, and real estate. Future board meetings are scheduled for October 8th at 8:30 a.m. is a curriculum committee meeting. October 11th at 8:30 a.m. is a policy committee meeting. October 14th at 8 p.m. is our education committee and supplementary regular board meeting. October 17th, 8:30 a.m., we're back here for facilities and purchasing. October 21st at 8 p.m. is the regular business board meeting, and October 23rd at, again, 8 p.m., not 8 a.m., 8 p.m., Communications Committee meeting. All of those meetings take place in this room. And with that, we are adjourned. Thank you all for attending.